Hey everyone, I'm Majiin and welcome in to World Tour Weekly, your one-stop shop for all competitive flesh and blood news. We had yet another eventful week with tournaments galore, week 2 of Skirmish season, some important news for the World Championship, and a couple more exciting spoilers. Let's get into it. Since Pro Tour Singapore, the top 2 decks in the format have been pretty much solidified as Gravy Bones and Arachne slipped through the cracks. This hasn't changed much as time went on, but the decks that are behind them certainly have. Over the last couple of weeks, we saw Ira take the 3rd most represented slots in a couple of events, but not really be able to convert as well as some of the other heroes. Let's see how things have changed for the past weekend in today's Metagame Minute. Okay, taking a look at Calling Copenhagen's Day 1 Hero Metagame breakdown, there's a lot of Gravy Bones, a lot of Slippies, this isn't particularly surprising, but Acilio is the 3rd most represented. I thought I would never see the day that something like this happened. Even though the heroes had a lot of recent success, I figured a lot of players would be turned off by the non-standard way that the deck plays the game. I couldn't be more happy to be proven wrong, as Acilio is one of the most fun decks I've ever played, and I hope he sees continued success so more players try him out. Looking back at the graphic, it seems like a lot of players have soured on Ira a bit as her representation has fallen and players seem to be shifting away from her and onto other aggressive decks like Syndra, Dio, and Acilio. Verdance has also fallen a bit in play rate, with other mid-rangey decks like Fang, Arachne Marionette, and Dorinthia slowly rising up. I've been doing a lot of yapping on here about Valda possibly being a contender, but it seems like Guardian players are opting for Victor and to a lesser extent Jarl. When we flip over to the Day 2 conversion rate, we see a pretty balanced spread, with no heroes doing particularly better than any of the other ones. Except for maybe Kano, but there was only 7 of them, so it's more of a sample size thing than anything else. Some other notable conversion stats are that Syndra, Ira, and Victor did pretty poorly, while Dorinthia and Dio had a solid weekend. Alright, moving on to the Calling top 8, we had a pretty good spread of heroes, with 2 Slippy, 1 Jarl, 1 Syndra, 1 Acilio, 1 Fang, and 2 Gravy Bones making the cut. The Jarl list of the weekend that saw success seemed to be geared almost entirely towards a fatigue game plan, likely to help combat the aggressive decks like Slippy. Copenhagen's Battle Hardened top 8 had a pretty different spread of heroes, with 1 Vincent, 1 Slippy, 1 Syndra, 2 Arachne Marionette, 1 Prism, and 2 Dio. Notably, no Gravy Bones made this top 8. Copenhagen wasn't the only event of the weekend, so let's take a look at the Battle Hardened Phoenix breakdown to see how it compares. This event had 2 Gravy Bones, 2 Slippy, 1 Dio, 1 Florian, 1 Acilio, and 1 Verdance in top cut. Alright, now that we know the breakdown for each event, let's talk about the champions in today's weekend winners. I already spoiled the winners by showing the brackets, but Francesco Giorgio won Calling Copenhagen on Arachne's slip through the cracks, defeating Maximilian Klein on Fang in the finals in a fantastic game. Conrad Neva took down the Battle Hardened Copenhagen event with a different flavor of Arachne, piloting Marionette to a first place finish. With so many Slippies virtually guaranteed at every tournament, it makes sense that Marionette is seeing more play and more success. And finally, looking towards the Phoenix Battle Hardened, Alexander Vor won playing Acilio Constella Intelligence. Of course, he had to commit a little brother-on-brother violence in the semifinals in order to get there. Vor recently took Acilio to a 3rd place finish in Calling Auckland, so it seems like both he and the Lightning Wizard are on a bit of a hot streak right now. Both his and the hero's success are making me think that maybe I picked the wrong wizard. Congratulations once again to all of our weekend winners. Okay, I mentioned in the beginning of this video that we have an update on the World Championship, and it's kind of a big one. Previously, a lot of players had speculated that since it's going to be Classic Constructed and Living Legend format, we wouldn't have draft in it at all. Thanks to an article that was posted yesterday, we now have confirmation that the only formats going to be played are Classic Constructed and Living Legend. Specifically, it will be 5 rounds of Classic Constructed Day 1, followed by 3 rounds of Living Legend. Then in Day 2, it'll be 3 rounds of Living Legend, followed by 4 rounds of Classic Constructed. Basically, a normal Pro Tour format, but with draft switched out for LL. That's not where the surprises end though, because the top 8 is going to be a best of 3 format with both Classic Constructed and Living Legend. It works like this. In Game 1, the higher seeded player can either choose the format or defer the choice to their opponent. The player who does not select the format gets to choose whether they play first or second. Game 2 will be played in the format that was not chosen for Game 1. So if Classic Constructed was chosen for Game 1, it will be Living Legend for Game 2. The player that lost Game 1 will choose whether they want to go first or second. Game 3, if necessary, will have its format chosen by the player who lost Game 2. Same as in Game 1, they can defer their format choice to their opponent. and whoever doesn't choose the format gets to choose who goes first or second. I'm really excited about best of 3 in World's Top 8. I feel like it lends a lot more weight to each match. I wanted something like this for the highest level events since I started playing Flesh and Blood. It also means that we get more high level tournament play on stream, so I'm happy about that too. It is a bit funny that after I finally get good at Limited, they take it out of Worlds, but what can you do? Alright, shifting over to Skirmish season, KO, Florian, and Aurora were tied for most wins in the Blitz format, with a couple of Wizards right behind them. This week we see KO and Florian pulling away from the pack with 12 wins each. Aurora and Blaze had another good weekend, but I wanted to point out that Shiana got a win as well, which is pretty cool to see. I was told that we can expect the Skirmish Living Legend data to come out next week once the Skirmish season is officially over. But while we're on the topic of the Blitz format, I wanted to highlight my absolute favorite card in Flesh and Blood in today's Card of the Week. Alright, my favorite card of all time is Gaze the Ages. It's a blue block 3, which is already a great start, especially in Wizard decks, and it offers so much utility to the decks that want to run it. I've obviously played this card a ton in Kano, but with Blitz being one of these skirmish formats, it's also seeing play in Blaze Firemind. The Opting charges her ability, adding yet another strong utility to the card. If you play another Wizard non-attack action at instant speed, I don't know, maybe from Blaze's ability, then it even bounces back to your hand after it's finished resolving. With the Living Legend format becoming more and more relevant every day, I also want to point out that Gaze the Ages is an absolute all-star in Kano decks that get to run Tome again. When playing that deck, it isn't even a little bit uncommon for me to play the same copy of Gaze the Ages 3 or more times in my combo turn. Using it to dig for power cards, set up tomes, or even just pitch for 3 are all very strong, and I'm very excited that another Wizard gets to use the card. And that's why it's today's Card of the Week. As always, we've saved the best for last, so let's talk about spoilers. The first card we're going to go over is Backspin Thrust, yet another Super Slam expansion slot spoiler. It's a red 0 cost 3 block 4 power attack action card that says once per turn instant, untap a cog you control. This gets +1 power or go again. Obviously, this is pretty similar to Sky Skimmer, but it complements the Puffin deck incredibly well. Normally for Puffin's biggest turns, you need to set up a bunch of untapped cogs and then you kind of exhaust them as you go through your turn. A big pop-off turn can be something like Sky Skimmer into Cogworks Dovetail into Palantir Aeronaut. This turn obviously needs to tap a lot of cogs in order to utilize its full potential. Slot Backspin Thrust into that hand and you get another 4 power go again, but it replenishes your cog resources instead of using them up. Even a smaller turn like Sky Skimmer into Backspin Thrust into Spitfire only needs 1 cog and it presents a ton of damage. I haven't played the Puffin deck myself, but I imagine this is an easy 3-of for any of the cog focused lists. Okay, this next spoiler seems tailor-made for Arachne. Okay, not that one. Alright, not that one either. I'm talking about the other Arachne. The card is called Hunter or Hunted. It's a blue 3 cost 4 block defense reaction that has a Brandon Sanderson novel for a text box. It basically says that when you block with it, name a card. You reveal the top card of your opponent's deck, and if you guessed correctly, you get to look through their hand, deck, and arsenal to banish 3 copies of the card with that name. It also has Contract, where you're contracted to banish cards with the same name that you guessed. Wow, what a coincidence. Speaking of coincidences, Arachne Huntsman's hero ability lets you look at the top card of your opponent's deck whenever you play a card with Contract. This card happens to have Contract. So when you play it, you get to look at the top card of their deck. Then you get to guess a card name for the defense reactions effect, meaning that you'll always choose the correct card's name. I could see this being absolutely brutal to play against when you get your big power card ripped away from the top of your deck. Will it be enough to push Arachne Huntsman into meta relevance? No. Will it banish all of my felling of the crowns at my local armory? Yes. Alright, with all our spoilers covered, let's look to the future to see what we'll be covering next week. Battle Hardened Orlando's taking place, and it's going to be a Living Legend Battle Hardened followed by a Classic Constructed event for the Pro Quest Plus. I'm definitely looking forward to this event even though I'm not playing because I really need more Living Legend decks to look at before I start preparing for Worlds. I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to play yet for that format. It's also going to be the last weekend of this skirmish season, so make sure that you get out there and get your shot at some great prizing like Cold Foil Cerebellum Processor and Scurv Stowaway. That's all I got for this episode. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Majiin, and I'll see you next time on World Tour Weekly.